Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Wednesday night, which means it's retro night, and it is Newcastle United versus Sheffield United that we are looking at tonight. Games gone by, of course. Memories from George, from Stu, from Steve, and from Mitch. And also a chance to try and bamboozle them later on with some celebrity fans of Sheffield United and of players that played for both Newcastle and Sheffield. And then the lads will come up with their own 1 to 11 and a manager to boot. So without further ado, it's good evening, George, and our usual history lesson, George.
I'm afraid so. 1954. The Chicken Road Academy were warming up for this one because they were convinced that we would have a good win because Sheffield United weren't playing very well, and but that's the programme. Thanks, Steve. And I have to say, not an inspiring front on that programme. I think it's dull as dishwater, but it's a programme nonetheless. I much prefer the ones that have got the pitch of the ground on and that sort of thing. Anyway, that's the programme. It was they weren't playing well, and the anticipation in the Chicken Road Academy was we'd get a good win. But also, I was getting lessons about what to watch for, and one of the first things I had to watch for was a new centre forward called Alan Monkhouse. Now, you all know Alan Monkhouse very well, don't you, lads? Yeah, of course you do. Alan Monkhouse was the new centre forward. The latest we'd bought from Millwall for about 14 grand. He went there from Thornaby, and apparently he was in the second division. He was an absolute rocket, and he came to us, and everybody thought he was going to do the same for us, and for a little while he did, and in this match particularly. Have you got the picture of Monkhouse there? That's him. That's Alan.
You just tell us when you want them up, because you send me these photos, right, George. You've got to remember, I haven't got a clue who these people are.
That's fine. That's fine. He was a you could say fairly robust sort of character. Fitted in well with the forwards that we had. He could play either centre forward or in one of the attacking midfield roles he would be now, but an inside forward I would call him. And he was in the team and played very well. The other thing I was told by the teachers at the Chicken Road Academy was to watch out for a little man called Jimmy Hagan playing for Sheffield United, and what a great character he was, but what a great footballer. They were all saying, well, he should be in the England team and all the rest of it. Anyway, the game set off, and it was a good game, and it was clear from the off that we were going to win this one. Milburn, as usual, creating absolute havoc down the right wing because Len White was at centre forward and Monkhouse was inside, and Broadus was on the other side, and Bobby Mitchell on the left wing. Actually, the team was starting to look like the '55 Cup final team. Simpson, Cowell, McMichael, Schooler, Brennan, Casey, Milburn, Broadus, White, Monkhouse, and Mitchell. Well, by the time we got to 55, Monkhouse had gone, Broadus had gone, and people like George Hanna and others popped into the team instead of them for the cup final. First half, Monkhouse scored two super goals, one with his head, one with his right foot from the edge of the penalty area, both from crosses by Jackie Milburn from the right wing. And then in the second half, it opened with Jackie himself sending in a pile driver from the corner of the penalty area, and then Monkhouse adding another two. In between, Sam McNabb scored a goal for Sheffield United, a bit of a consolation towards the end. But the star for them, and he did his best to try and resurrect things, was the man I was told to watch for, Jimmy Hagan. There should be a picture of a statue of Jimmy Hagan or a picture of Jimmy Hagan in there somewhere. That's him. Gives you an indication of how he was thought of at Sheffield United. They put a statue outside their ground at Bramall Lane, and he was I mean, my family was saying what a great player he was. He should be in the England team, and it's a disgrace that he's not. And he worked his socks off to try and shore up this very poor Sheffield United team. I think there should be a one of them with his England cap on in a picture. That's him. He got a cap, but that's it. He got a one and only cap for England when people around the country were saying, well, he should be in the team. He should be in the team. I think there's an action shot of him playing for Sheffield as well, Steve. That's him in action for Sheffield United. A very talented, very bright player, but not just bright on the field, very bright off the field, talent for languages. And just to prove it, when he finished playing, he went for a job in Portugal with Porto. And went for an interview and didn't need an interpreter because he picked up enough Portuguese before he went to actually be able to talk to them, and he got the job. And he had 5 years there with them, winning 3 championships while he was in Portugal. That just amazes me, but it's fantastic. But the sort of things that nowadays, if you could find 10 intelligent footballers in the Premier League, you'd be pretty lucky. But he certainly was one. And as I say, he worked very, very hard to keep this team together that we were absolutely battering. 36,668 at the ground. And what happened to our hat-trick centre-forward? Well, by the end of the season, he was gone, and he'd gone to York. We paid 14,000 for him the year before, and we sold him to York for 4. And then he was only at York a short while, and he ended up playing for Stockton and then South Shields to end his career. Amazing how somebody could bang onto the scene like that with 3 goals in a team like ours, and then suddenly just disappear. That season, 54, we finished 15th, and lo and behold, Sheffield United got relegated. It really was a bad season for them. And it marked the end, really, of Jimmy Hagan's active career. So an interesting match, if you're a Newcastle fan, must have been a terrible match for people from Sheffield because they were really given the runaround. And at the end of it all, we went home with everybody saying, oh, well, Monkhouse will be the one for the future. If you got Monkhouse, Milburn and White and Keeble all in the same forward line, nobody can touch her. Well, by the end of the season, the poor kid was gone. He wasn't even there, which is typical Newcastle United. So that's my first one, March 54, 4-1 win against Sheffield United, who were eventually relegated.
Great stuff, George, and thanks as always for doing a bit extra research and sending the photos in, because it certainly brings your stories to life. And just a quick message to Rachel: get well soon. Obviously just been following your updates there in the chat, and obviously we know you're still in hospital. Hopefully this show again has given you just a little bit of sanity as you're on medication. That let's hope it pulls through. And she says she's had plenty of entertainment from us last night as well, which was great. So get well soon, Rachel. I'm sure all the lads would wish you all the best as well.
All the best, Rachel. Get well, Rachel.
Yeah. Okay, Stu, promoted to the top row tonight. You got in quick, Mr. Penman. Well done.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad to see that you appreciate George and the rest of the panel as well, because sometimes it's not said, is it? And you've got to see the commitment that the lads do here as well. I mean, if you look at Steve Hasty, he's doing the show tonight from a passport photo booth. Does that mean Mitch has been captured and he's just about to do a hostage video? Quite possibly. So I just thought I'd mention that. Right, the first game I want to see. Cue the Hamlet cigar music for Steve, by the way. You should. Sorry, Steve, I was only joking, man. So the first game I'm talking about is our last away game of the first season. We got promoted under Keegan, end of April 1994, and we went there in third, almost certain to finish third, and we only needed a point to be mathematically safe of third. But I think with a goal difference, it would have taken a Newcastle-esque performance in Arsenal battering whoever they were playing for them to catch us, and we had them on the last day of the season as well. So imagine that it was our highest finish in decades. You know, we're just about to finish third. It was sun was shining. You know, we're ready to cut the blades down. Pardon any pun there. And the songs were all getting sung. You know, the E-I-E-I-E-I-O, up the Premier League we go. And we were going to Europe. And considering where we were 2 seasons before that, when we were very close to getting relegated into the Mackem division, then, you know, it's such an amazing roller coaster of a ride that we were on. But this game, Newcastle didn't turn up. You know, you hear a lot of phrases at the end of the season saying the players are already on the sunbeds. And this is one of the games that could be levelled at that Newcastle team. Not many times you could say that about that team, but this was definitely one of them. The team that had most to lose was Sheffield United. They were in a massive, which ended up being a really exciting relegation battle. I think it was one of the most exciting relegation battles there's been in where like 5 or 6 teams could have went down. And I remember watching, if you remember the last game of the season, they were changing. Each goal went in and it changed, and Sheffield United ended up going down with the 90th minute goal by Everton or something strange like that. So the game kicked off. They were up for it more, and they were winning every ball and every second ball. And see, we were expected to win, you know, and you can understand why the fans were being a bit vocal.
It's George. I was wondering who it was. I couldn't tell who it was. You know,
it couldn't be me. I've got no mates. No one rings us. So it wasn't me. So anyway, I was saying we're expected to win. The team, I think, went there behaving or expecting to win, and you can understand why. And you can also understand why Keegan was hopping up and down things as if he'd stood on some nettles barefooted in the first half. The Newcastle just weren't at the races at all. But we managed to get to half-time, nils each. Come out the second half, and there was 2 goals scored in the second half, and they were both scored by Nathan Blake. Now, if you're wondering why Sheffield United, I had to write these names down when I did a bit of research on the game, why Sheffield United were in a relegation battle, you'd be surprised considering they had such legends of the game. In that team that day, there was Paul Beasley, Dave Tuttle, Jordan Gannon, Paul Rogers, you know, all household names. So you can understand why they were in the relegation battle. But what they did have was desire. And it's the one thing that says so often is you've got to win the little battles before you win the war, before you've got the right to play the football. And again, they had, as I said earlier, they had more to lose. But the first 2 goals were oddly avoidable and, I suppose, comical in a way. The game didn't matter as much as I mentioned earlier, because it looked like we were going to finish third anyway. But the first one come from a corner where Nathan Blake headed it, and it wasn't even a powerful header. It just like looped slowly towards the goal. We had 2 people on the line. We're in the stands behind, packed to the rafters, in the stands behind it, and you think, well, that's going to get cleared. And we were playing better the second half, and this ball just seemed like loop over Pav's head, and he's leant back and tried to claw it away, and then he did, and then it got cleared, and then the linesman flagged for crossing the line. Now, I'd like to see that if they could do VAR on it now, because I'm still to this day unsure if it crossed the line or not. But it did, and we're 1-0 down. Then Newcastle seemed to wake up, and you know, it was to me, it was one-way traffic, non-stop pressure. We get a corner in injury time. It comes across and it gets cleared. It just gets cleared by one of their defenders, and they've got Nathan Blake up front on his own, being man-marked by our strongest player, Scott Sellers, and he obviously outmuscles Scott off the ball, and he's through on goal, slides up through past Pav, and they win 2-0. But as I said, it was an end of an amazing, probably the best season I've had supporting Newcastle, because the expectations weren't as high as they were the following 2 years. And we went there, and it was like Keegan made everyone believe that season, didn't he? He says, we're not just here to make the numbers up, we're going to get into Europe. And, you start thinking, hey, what's this guy on? But he made the players believe it. He made us believe it. And we went and did it. So even when we did get beaten in that season, it didn't matter, just how the whole area, the whole region was up with it. And I'm always grateful that I was able to go to these games. I think there was 21 away games, 19 of them that season. And, you look back now 20 odd years later, and he's nearly 30 years later now, isn't it? And you start thinking, God, there's fans that have been born since that have never had the opportunity to see teams like that. So I was happy with it, and we got into Europe, we sang it, and I loved the fact Sheffield United, I think that season, if it was, Leeds were there as well. It was one of our closest away games, and we were back in the town for 7:30 on the Lash. So it wasn't like a London trek or something like that. It was like playing at home. So fantastic day, even though we got beat. The celebrations were there. The players were on the sunbeds. The fans were getting sun-kissed in the stands, and obviously something else that rhymes with sun-kissed before they got in the stands. So a good day was had by all. So that was my first game, the 1994 season, 93-94.
Mark says those games in the 90s seem a million miles away now, but still have vivid memories of better times. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's the same reason I'm off to Old Trafford at the weekend. It's just it's the hope that kills you. Mitch.
Take your boots, Steve, take your boots.
I might have to, mate. You're not wrong. Mitch, good evening, mate.
Evening, mate. You all right?
Good to see you, yeah. Go on, make it as your first recollection.
Okay, first game I'm going to talk about is October 1988, and it's a League Cup game. I think the incarnation of the League Cup then was the Rumbelows Cup. I could be wrong, but I think it was a Rumbelows Cup then. And it was a strange day because firstly we were already 3-0 down from the first leg. These ties were played over 2 legs, and we'd got humped at Bramall Lane, played atrociously. In between this game and the first leg, we'd managed to miraculously win away at Liverpool and then lose again at home. I forget who to. And that saw the end of Willie McFall. And this was the first game played after Willie McFall was sacked as manager. But it was also the roundabout the time that Sir John Hall and the Magpie Group was starting to pile pressure on the McKeague family to start to allow the shareholders to get onto the board. And starting to allow the first talks of putting a share offer to fans together. And so there was a lot of odd tension, not necessarily revolved around the what was happening on the pitch, but it was more about what was happening off the pitch. And this was the first game after McFall had gone, and those who trooped along on the night, it was classic sort of October midweek game. You kind of went along because you just wanted to see a reaction. You wanted to see something better than what we'd had. And certainly that's what we got. But what we also got that night was one of the most exquisite displays of the offside trap laid out by Sheffield United. If you could have like listened to the commentary and shut your eyes and thought we were playing Arsenal that day. To give you an idea, when I've gone back through stats on the game and linking it to what I remember, Michael O'Neill had 2 goals chalked off for offside within the first 25 minutes. And they just managed it exquisitely. It was just a proper put up the shutters and come on, then we've got 3 goals on you. Let's see what you've got. The whole game was almost like an attack versus defence training game. We managed to make a breakthrough just before half time when Mirandina played a lovely little through ball for John Hendry to actually pop it in the back of the net. Hendry was the only one who seemed to be able to spring the trap. After half time, they returned the favour. A cool finish from Mirandina to make it 2-0, and then you had game on. And it was genuinely just about one-way traffic. I think we had another 2 efforts choked off in the second half as well. And right towards the end, we had a chance of taking it extra time. But John Robertson missed probably the best chance of the game with almost an open goal, and I think he headed it onto his own knee, and then it went out for a goal kick. And so it wasn't to be. it was a really strange night with a strange atmosphere because of everything that was going on. If I remember right, before the game, McKeag had gone on to Time T's TV and pleaded with the fans to have a go at him rather than have a go at the team, which was a very strange move, to be fair, because that's what he certainly got. That's what he certainly got. And it was the first, those little green shoots of change, you know, and we needed change. And I guess we're in that same position now. Change is the only thing that's going to change not just the atmosphere in the ground, but the whole atmosphere of the club, and that's what we saw then. But that's the first game against Sheffield United I wanted to talk about, just because of its strange situation in the history and development of the club, but also the fact that Sheffield United turned up that day playing in red shorts, which was quite confusing. But that's another matter. That's me and Kits. I get irritated when people make not necessarily the right changes at the right times. But that was the first game, a win, but not unfortunately a win on our aggregate.
Yeah, good stuff. For those of you who tune in on a regular basis, we do often give you the England team if there's an international on. It's been announced: Pickford's in goal, Kyle Walker, Luke Shaw, Declan Rice, John Stones, Harry Maguire, Jack Grealish, Calvin Phillips, Harry Kane, Raheem Sterling and Mason Mount. That's your starting 11 tonight. Okay, Steve, back on with the retro stuff, and Sheffield United is the team this week. Over to you.
Yep, it's usually only Keith that gets phone calls, but George is obviously up to something. I can tell you. You can tell, can't you?
I did laugh when they said that if it's Kate Stewart, Mark Byers, I think it was Mark Byers, might have been somebody else in him. If it's Kate Stewart, yeah, and if that's Kate Stewart on the phone to George, we definitely know she's not Steve. Yeah, exactly. It's an in-joke on Twitter today, guys. Anyone who hasn't seen it, but
yes,
go on.
Yeah, the game I'm picking, I'm going back to the 8th of January 1977, an FA Cup third round. Bramall Lane, Sheffield United were in the second division at this point. Newcastle were in the first. We'd gone through that transition at the start of the season. Gordon Lee had got rid of Supermark. He'd got rid of John Tudor. He'd got rid of Terry Hibbert. He'd got rid of Frankie Clark. He brought, after the League Cup final, he obviously felt as though that was the way that he wanted to go. We knew he was going to pedal Supermark. It was shocking and disgusting the way that it went on, but that's beyond it. Bramall Lane. Let's talk about Bramall Lane. Probably the darkest football ground you could possibly go to see a game of football in at that time. You were in the corner, but on the side, inside the stand. I think it was 30-watt bulbs. It just seemed as though you were stepping out of like a dingy, dark city. And obviously, we call it the Steel City, and it was a 3 o'clock kickoff, and you get in about 2:30, and it was already dark and it was already misty. The lights were on, but it was just dark inside the ground. That was the first recollection I had of like, wow, what's going on here? It's ridiculous. So you get into the ground. I'll name
Steve, sorry to interrupt, mate. They've got. I know what you're talking about, but behind the stand, they've got huge floodlights, haven't they?
Oh yeah,
massive floodlights. But the stands now. Well, I suppose you don't want to be talking about pylons at the moment, so we better.
I think each one had a 30-watt light bulb in as well. And I'm talking about a good light candle. We look at the team. It was Mahoney, Napris and Kennedy as fullbacks. Centre half was McCaffrey. The midfield lineup of Cassidy, Craig, who's that? Jeff Nolte, Mickey Burns, and up front, Alan Gowland, Paul Cannell, and providing the ammunition for those two big target men, Stewie Barraclough. It was 0-0. It was one of the most boring games you've ever known. Absolutely shocking. I remember walking out thinking, why have I come all the way down to watch this? I was with a neighbour. He took the car. We often used to go to Hartlepool or Darlington at least once or twice a season. He was a big Torquay fan, so if Torquay were ever in the region, he always wanted to go. And he used to always say, if we get a good cup draw, I'll take you in the car. We'll go down. So this was the one, Sheffield, straight after New Year. So I'm going to have to talk about the third round replay. Third round replay comes along. It's a fortnight later, and Newcastle turned it on. 3-1 win. Goes by 2-0 up. Tommy Craig and Mickey Burns. Garner scored after about 30 minutes to make it 2-1. And then Aidan McCaffrey popped up around about just after the start of the second half, made it 3-1, and we cruised through. And you're thinking, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. This strangely, I mean, believe it or not, at this particular time, the turn of the year, I think we were sitting third in the league. And we were excited after everything happened with Supermark and the rest of the team, the changeover. There was this sort of, this team can do something. We're sitting third in the league. We got drawn against Man City in the fourth round. And in between the games and just before the fourth round game, Lee walked and we got beat in front of 45,300. We got turned over 3-1. And that was us out the cup. In the meantime, we had the rebellion. We had the players' rebellion. They all wanted Richard Dennis to get the job. Board didn't want it. The players were going to go on strike. It was a chaotic time. But what's new in Newcastle? This is 1977. It was a chaotic time. Still a chaotic time. Getting used to it by now, or at least we should be. And I think we ended up finishing the league something like 7th and qualified for Europe. And then again, that's your mind gone. What's going on with Newcastle? It's just the way things go. But of course, it all turned the end of the following season. Well, it turned after the UEFA Cup game against Bastia. And then the rot really set in. But going back to the first game, I cannot say anything about the game other than it was dark and dingy place, lit up by 30-watt bulbs, and couldn't wait to get home.
Great stuff. Great early memories there. No sign of George. I hope he's okay after his phone call. We'll give the sponsors a shout out anyway, and it's a big thank you to Spider VPN, who are with us for another month. For all your internet security, Google Spider VPN, and they are the boys to trust. You can protect your passwords and your photographs, everything on your computer. Give Spider VPN a search today. And skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Also, a big thank you to L&G Family Funeral Directors who've agreed to stay on for another month. 0191 389 7245. And to Darren Baldwin Funerals. 0191 478 2730. Website www.darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Big shout out to John, who's in the chat, from qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wolves and Newcastle. Also, the man who runs our website, where you can buy many t-shirts and other things linked to the show, NUFCmatters.com. Have a look on there today. And Jab Signature as well, the guys who make all of our flyers. His new boxing range is out imminently. First time visitor to the channel, click Newcastle Legends badge in the bottom right hand corner to subscribe to the channel. It's as simple as that. It's free. We still do 7 shows a week. And if you miss us on live on YouTube, then you can find us on podcasts, suppliers such as iTunes and Spotify. Give the show a thumbs up as well. Hit the thumbs up below just to like it, and share to your other social media by clicking share underneath the video. Quick shout out to the food bank. The matchday bucket is still ongoing. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. And you just make a deposit before the match against Manchester United on Saturday, and you can still go into the raffle to win the watch. The winner of the watch will be announced when we eventually get the pool night rearranged, when John is back on his feet from QTech. Quick shout out as well for a couple of events coming up. An evening with Gavin Peacock, Friday the 29th of October, and that is tickets £15. NewcastleLegends.com for the tickets for that. Gavin will also be bringing copies of his book to buy on the night. Should be a cracking night. And the Food Bank Christmas Do is selling well. Over 100 tickets now gone for that. And that's a fundraiser for the Food Bank, November the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £12 for that. And again, NewcastleLegends.com. Just click shop and you can buy your tickets for that event. Got another one being announced soon, another big event for the end of November, so keep your ears peeled for that. Okay then, Stu, back to you for your second story, mate.
Well, the second one I've picked is, normally we pick games that we've been to, and that's what we talk about, but I'm going to pick a game that no one's been to, and that was the one earlier this year. when we got beat. No, it's not. It's pig gin and Sprite, but it is a pig. The one earlier, that was just answering the question on the bottom of the screen. It was on the 12th of January this year, and the reason I picked it is because we had about 5 or 6 games all in about 2 months that were all vying for the worst game I've ever seen in watching Newcastle for 40 years. And I mean, those games, we had the Brighton away in that period, we had Villa away, Brentford in the Cup, West Brom away. But to me, this was the pinnacle, if you want to use a bad term, I suppose. It was the I've ever seen Newcastle play. And I remember putting on Twitter, I used these words, I've written them down. The performance was turgid, lethargic, lackluster, inept, disorganised, uninterested, lazy, clueless, pathetic, shocking, embarrassing, woeful, disgraceful, shameful, amateurish, incompetent, frustrating, abysmal, and quite literally the worst performance in all my time watching. And that's saying something considering what we've had what we subject ourselves to over the years. It was the lowest of the low, and I think it was more the circumstances around it. You know, I've watched Newcastle get whipped loads of times and played badly, but for this, now we have to take the contributing factors into consideration. Sheffield United. Now we're into January. The season's what, 4 or 5 months old now. They haven't won a game all season. They've got 2 points season, and Steve Bruce's brand of football rolls into town, and the bookmakers make Sheffield United favourites for this game. That's where we were at, you know. So that was probably the lowest ebb to me, that performance. I'll rush about Bruce Ball there. You have to. There was no desire. We kicked off. There was no cohesion. It was as if they just picked 11 people up the stands. Well, obviously they couldn't because there was no one there. But they just picked 11 people on the way down and says, "Right, you're playing for the tune tonight." And it was like strangers. They didn't know who each other were. There was no effort. There was no running. There was no will. And that to me is unforgivable. You know, you're playing for a club, you're playing professionally. It's your job. You know, your job's to do the best you can. And granted, you're not always going to be able to do the best you can all the time, but at least try. You know, and somehow, and to this day, I still don't realise it. I watched the game again, but we managed to get to half time 0-0. We did manage to get a red card, so we beat them on that. That was Fraser being, I would say, totally frustrated. You know, he got a yellow card for kicking someone twice in the space of 3 minutes. But again, he looked like he just didn't fancy it. None of them did. And yeah, I'm still thinking, even if you remember the goal, it was a really dubious penalty that Fernandez was meant to have pulled the player down that was pulling him, and you know, and it wasn't given. Then it goes to the monitor, and when it goes to the monitor, and everyone from Newcastle is protesting against the Premier League. He's got one of the ears in his phone, and he decides it's a penalty. So the local hero, Billy Sharp, smashes it home. And don't get us wrong, they deserve to win. They deserve to be probably 3-0 at that stage. But it's just the circumstances of how we went down, how we got beat. Yeah. The last thing I want to say is, I know it probably goes on the themes what Steve was saying about the darkness in Sheffield, but this to me was the darkest of dark games of Bruce's managerial tenure, and it's littered with them. But to me, this was the lowest point ever of watching Newcastle United. There was no hope after it. You know, as if the players were expecting him to get sacked, and thought, well, if we don't play well tonight, he's gone. And the same thing happened, I know, a couple of weeks later at Brighton, where they thought he actually had been sacked. But to me, the lack of effort in that game was unforgivable. And we can say Bruce isn't a good manager, which he isn't. You can say Ashley's a bad owner, which he is. But the players sometimes they seem to escape criticism, and they deserve criticism that night. It was an embarrassing, shambolic performance. So that's my little moan over. And yeah, I did it going first as well. Listen, George, I got promoted too quickly. I got excited. So I'm sorry I couldn't bring a happier game to talk about, but it's one of the most recent ones, and it really, I can't think of a game I've watched Newcastle playing where the effort level or the performance level was lower than that. So
No, it
that's
was
the
poor.
game.
It was poor. Mitch, over to you for your second game.
So, in a word, Stu, shite.
Well, I'm not one for swearing, Mitch, as you know, so I didn't want to say that.
Well, no, I'll do it for you. It's fine. Right, my next game. It's funny. Steve's touched on something I was going to touch on, but I've got a slightly different view of it. Bramall Lane under lights has got something about it. I don't know what it is about it, but it's something to do with Sheffield being hilly and where it is in Sheffield, and you always seem to get that mist, almost similar to what you get at St James's, or you used to get even more at St James's than since they put the big stands up, you know. And it always seemed to remind me a little bit of that. So for me, it always had a bit of something about it. But also getting into the bloody stands was a death trap because you couldn't see where the hell you were going. And that's even as recently as this game, which I'm going only back to 2009, the championship season under Houghton. I think this was a Monday night for some reason. Either way, it was certainly a weekday evening game under the lights. And we were both, if I remember right, both teams were really badly injury hit. And Sheffield United's manager at the time, who was Kevin Blackwell, I think, made a big song and dance about it afterwards, claiming they were the better team, etc., and everyone had all the players fit. But what he failed to mention was we had, you know, a good crop of kids on the bench as well. And it was that sort of cluster of injuries was what led to Houghton signing the players in January. That made a big difference to the rest of that season. The first half was actually pretty non-existent. It was stale. Two teams kind of finding their feet a little bit. Certainly players, you could tell on both teams there was players who hadn't played a lot together. But the second half was much better. Just after half time, Nolan had a shot saved, and then Carroll hit the post with a header. And then on 54 minutes, Nolan won the ball. I think it was off a young Kyle Walker, who made a lot of the challenge. And again, after the game, Blackwell whinged about it should have been a foul. And for me, it was just one of those challenges where somebody comes off better than the other. But then it fell to Ryan Taylor, who just hit a ridiculous shot. Was fizzed in. It was one of those ones that gets about 6 inches off the ground at about 200 miles an hour. And a defender, who I think was Chris Morgan, stuck a leg out, and unfortunately for him, unfortunately for us, it put it on the other side of the keeper, and up would go 1-0 in the away ends, full of limbs, as they would say. We should have doubled the lead on 60 minutes. Carroll hit the bar, but then it was one of those games where typically Newcastle United, you kind of get in the last 10 minutes and you've looked reasonably easy, and then suddenly we get a bit panicky. And the last 10 minutes did get a bit frantic. I think Harper made 3 or 4 really good saves. I seem to remember one almost kind of with his forearm come elbow that he just managed to keep it off on the line and then smother it. But we took the 3 points, and they were an important 3 points to put back at the top of the league, because at that time we had the cluster of clubs only 3 points behind. I think it was West Brom, Cardiff, and I forget who the other one was, but there was another 3 or 4 clubs that were within a win or a win and a draw from where, and it certainly wasn't looking as runaway as what the season ended up being. And doesn't everybody just love a midweek away win under lights? There's something about a midweek away win under lights that always just feels better. And I've got no idea why, but that was certainly one of them, and we really enjoyed that little trip.
Great stuff. Okay, Steve, on to you for your second story.
Yeah, well, I couldn't be more depressed after the first one, so I had to go for something enlightening. I had to try and lift my spirits anyway. So it had to be done. Nobody else had picked it. I'm sure Steve Wilkinson would have if he got in quick, but he's away on holiday, I think. So I've gone for the semi-final FA Cup, 1998, 12th of April. Old Trafford, Sunday game. This was the first FA Cup semi-final that we'd been in since 74. It was my 12th semi-final. and the excitement that buzzed around the place. Obviously, we'd lost Kevin Keegan in at the start of the season, and we had Dalglish as the manager. We'd had some players coming in. I'll read the team. I mean, just to give you an idea, the team that lined up for that semi-final at Old Trafford was Given in goal. The fullbacks were Barton and Stuart Pearce. The centre-half pairing of Dabizas and Philippe Albert. A midfield four of Gillespie on one side, Speed on the other, David Batty in the middle, and John Barnes for mobility, obviously, with Alan Shearer up front, partnering a player who would probably fit into our team perfectly now, Andreas Anderson. Andreas Anderson was one of those players that was described at one point as an excellent build-up player, but had no idea how to finish. None whatsoever. And yet, during his time at Newcastle, he scored a goal at Old Trafford. And I think if anyone remembers that goal against Manchester United that he scored, it wasn't so much the ball went in the back of the net. It was the absolute look of shock on his face when he managed to put it in. But getting back to this game, we kicked off. It wasn't a very good first half. Boy, was the ground bouncing, though. I mean, we had 30-odd thousand. They had 20-odd thousand. That stand, Mitch is still moving. He feels as though he is. He hasn't quite recovered, I don't think, and no Stewie, because that stand was rocking like you've never known. The Newcastle fans were absolutely at their peak. The noise, the excitement, the in the bars beforehand, the walk up the ground, everything about that game just had the hairs on the back of your neck. I mean, I think the hairs were on the back of my neck before I even left the house. I think I was having my breakfast and the hairs were up. It was just the excitement, the buzz, the thought that we were going to get to an FA Cup final. And of course, you've got to remember, Sheffield United were in the First Division, the Championship as it was then. They were in the Championship and we were a Premiership club. First half, Anderson threw one-on-one on the keeper, if you remember. And he didn't miss the effort. He just didn't hit the ball. All he had to do was go around the keeper who came out, and he did nothing. I think the keeper knocked it onto him, and he knocked it forward and knew nothing about it, and eventually got cleared off the line. And then I think there was an effort by Speed, who typical Gary Speed. You put the ball into the box, and Gary Speed will hang like a salmon, won't he? Or leap like a salmon and hang like a hang glider. And he nodded the ball down and it hit the post. He had another shot that just whistled past the post. But then, I mean, we were on top. There's no question about that. And then up steps Alan Shearer. And if ever modern day footballers could learn anything from Alan Shearer, it's the fact that the ball isn't dead until you decide it is. And with a player like Shearer, the ball was never dead. And if you remember, the cross came in. There's a little bit of interplay on the left-hand side. Batty went over with a challenge, which I don't know about the rest of you, but I screamed. I was convinced it was a penalty. The referee either played on or decided it wasn't. It landed beautifully for John Barnes, who put a fabulous floating cross into the back post. Shearer leapt for it. He headed it. And the goalkeeper made an absolutely brilliant save. But he parried it. And who was the first to react after that? Alan Shearer. Like, wow, that was it. Straight in. The ball's on the line, and Shearer's in the net with the ball. And that's the making of a man who was never going to be beaten. And the noise that went up. And that, look at him, you just remember moments like that throughout for the rest of your life. Alan, I'm sure, will remember it for the rest of his life. But boy, did every fan in that ground. And I'm sure there was plenty of kids who were at the ground who practiced and recreated that in the schoolyard for weeks and weeks afterwards. But it was an absolute joy of a game. You look at it and you think about it and you think, oh dear me, what an absolute joy it was to just be there and experience. You look at the bench that we had. I think Ketspire came on for Anderson. Rush was on the bench. John Dal Thomason who made an amazing career for himself in Europe after not managing.
Just not at Newcastle.
That's right. You know, I mean, he ended up winning the European Cup, for goodness sake. Then we had Aaron Hughes. He was also on the bench. And Shaka Heslop, he was the keeper on the day, sitting on the bench. Only 2 keepers, guys, not 4. Only 2 this particular game. You know, we're going to see that at some point in time, aren't we? We're going to end up at some point. Newcastle will name 3 keepers on the bench.
Do we not need to name 4 keepers in goal at the weekend?
You know what? It wouldn't surprise you, and it also. You know, I think there's probably some of us that are willing that we do, but let's not get drawn into that whole circus that's going to carry on the rest of the week. Let's just remember that particular game. We got to Wembley. We were through. I think the other tie was Man United Arsenal, and I'm not too sure. Actually, I can't remember now what the other tie was. That might have been the following year. No, it wasn't. That's right. It wasn't Man United. That was the following year, but. We got through on the day, and that drive home was absolutely brilliant. You know, I remember I was driving. I took the lads down, and then we went back to the pub, and we stayed for a few hours. And then some people were asleep in the car, others were still buzzing and still going on. We had the radio on, listening to all the conversation, bit of music, and just a nice steady drive home. But this was Wembley. This was us finally going to Wembley, our age. You know, on our own. I'd been to Wembley in 76. I hadn't gone in 74. I was there in 76, seen the defeat. But this was 1998. This was going to be a long weekend. This was traveling Friday lunchtime, and it was coming back Sunday or Monday. That's the way that this was going to pan out. I mean, some of the lads were talking about going even earlier. You know, it was if we could get the time off work. But that's what it was like in those days. That's what the buzz that Newcastle United gave you, and I just look back and I just think, you know, will we ever be in a situation like that? Will we ever have strikers of the caliber of Alan Shearer? Will we ever have a midfielder that can hold the midfield together like a David Batty? Will we ever have a goalkeeper like Shea Given, which maybe I'm being a bit disingenuous of the 4 that we've got. Maybe he's not. I don't think any of them would sort of be able to lace his boots, to be perfectly honest. But it was just a great day. The FA Cup. There's a buzz about it, and there was a buzz that day. So that's my my third game. Actually, I was going to say my 4th game. That's my 3rd game, which is really my 2nd game. How are the lads?
Brilliant. No, great stuff. Great recollections. And pity we missed out on George's 2nd game, but
he said, okay. I messaged him. He says the bank on the phone. So if it's something to do with a £300 million transfer, I'll be kicking his ass later.
Fantastic. Hey, let's hope.
Or a £300 million T-shirt.
I think we could do a lot worse than having George in control of Newcastle United, by the way, with all them years of experience.
True.
I thought it was Steve Wilkinson ringing up to take him off.
All right, good stuff, lads. As always, some great recollections. And once again, we will go for the celebrity pictures first. And I've got to be honest, in my research for this, it is probably the first time where these supporters, I would say probably all bar one, are genuine supporters of Sheffield United. They've all got a connection with them, and pretty easy this week, but here we go.
Oh, that's the lead singer of Def Leppard, Joe Elliott.
Joe Elliott.
That's Joe Elliott doing a Steve Hasty there. Very.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. That was a potential lookalike no one's come up with. Okay, this is the next one.
Ooh. Who's that?
Is that Kell Brook?
Kell Brook, the boxer.
Well spotted.
Yeah, great fighter. Had the privilege of seeing him box on more than one occasion. Cracking lad as well. Okay, next.
Oh, that's
Jessica Ennis-Hill.
Yes,
Jessica Ennis-Hill, another big Sheffield United fan. That's her, situated in a school, passing on her wisdom in Sheffield. So again, a genuine Sheffield United fan.
Ooh.
Oh, golfer.
Fitzpatrick.
What game?
Yeah, there you go.
Matt Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick, yeah, well done, lads. Good spot. Good spot. Okay, George is back. We're just going through the famous faces, George. We will give you the opportunity to do your second game though. But let us get through the famous faces first. Okay, here we go.
Mick Foley, the wrestler.
Yeah.
Mick Foley, the wrestler. That's the guy on the left, of course, not the guy on the right.
Sean, the interview in a minute.
Yeah.
And that's Flea.
Flea
from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Again, another Sheffield United fan.
He genuinely is as well.
That's Joe Root.
Yeah, Joe Root.
Joe Root.
He's a big fan, yeah.
Another big fan, yeah.
Paul Heaton.
Paul Heaton,
of course, beautiful South, and the House Martins.
I always thought he was from Hull.
Yeah, I always thought he was a Hull fan, and big Sheffield United fan.
That's Sean
Bean.
Sean Bean, of course, who got the opportunity to play on Bramall Lane and also play a part as one of the players. So great stuff. We'll do the players who played for both teams as well, or have had an involvement.
That's Dean Saunders, isn't it?
Dean Saunders, correct. He was part of Graham Souness's management team at Newcastle United.
Keith Gillespie.
Keith Gillespie.
Franz Carr.
Franz Carr, yeah.
Yeah, Franz Carr.
Des Hamilton.
Dizzy.
Des Hamilton, yeah. Didn't have too good a time at Newcastle.
Is that Wayne Quinn?
Wayne Quinn.
Hope.
No.
Was that Ian Bennett?
No.
It's not Gary Kelly, is it?
Gary Kelly, yeah. Now, this is interesting because most of you will associate Sheffield United with his brother, of course, Alan Kelly. Gary Kelly actually went to Sheffield United, but only played one game.
Yeah.
So there we go.
You were there to take a photo of it. That's amazing.
And I was there to take a photo of it for this.
Right. Who's that?
Who's that?
Is that Edgar?
David Edgar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Billy White.
Big Billy, the man who Joe Allen describes as hard as goat's knees.
Gary Speed.
And of all the people that put up today, would have been his 52nd birthday today. Never far from our thoughts, Gary Speed.
Definitely not.
Steve.
Brucey, another club. Now, I'm not. Forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure this was his first club. I'm pretty sure he was player manager at Sheffield United.
I think he was, yeah.
He was, yeah. That's right.
Ned Kelly.
David Kelly scored a goal in the telly.
Yeah.
All right.
Was he on the coaching staff there as well?
Yeah.
Hodges,
I know that.
Glenn Hodges.
Glenn Hodges, of course, the man who infamously spent about 85 days at Newcastle United. That's it then. So a clean sweep for the lads tonight. I think they were fairly easy, I've got to be honest. But really good. Okay, George, we will finish off with you.
Swap me and George back over?
Yeah, where is he? There he is. Okay, there we go, George. Get back in your box, man. Get back in your box.
Quite right.
Okay, George, over to you for your second game.
I'm sorry for that interlude. Believe it or not.
Have you bought the club, George? Have you bought the club? Well, that's what we all want to know, because it was the bank, apparently.
It was certainly Lloyd's Bank on the phone at their fraud department. Somebody on the South Coast having a great night on my debit card. They spent
Jesus Christ!
Spent about $4,000 this afternoon, apparently. So,
wow. Yeah,
Lloyd's, big advert for Lloyd's. They clear it up. There's no comeback on me. They do the whole lot. So there's a one for Lloyd's. Sorry about it, lads, but here goes. You don't understand why I had to back off. It was quite important. Second match was 3rd of February 1968. and it's there for a number of reasons. And there's the program. Much
Is
better.
that the right one?
No.
Is that the right? Is that? No, it's that one. That's it. I've got Sheffield Wednesday. I've got more Sheffield United programs and everything else. There we go. That's it.
Again, even the frontage of that one isn't particularly brilliant, is it? It's
No.
better than the last one. But anyway, that's the program. This match I've taken because 2 reasons. One, it was until recently. I say until recently, advisedly, it was probably the worst bloody match I'd seen in my whole life.
Oh, Christ.
Until recently. But this one, I mean, we were struggling and they were struggling even worse. I went with the crowd, the lads and so on, to see a match where we were going to hammer these because they were playing so badly. Well, they were bad and we weren't much better. And like all matches that get into the doldrums, they need a spark to set them off, or at least give them something to remember. Well, what to remember was a Wyn Davies header, a goal. And I think you've got a picture of Win the Leap that I sent you.
Yeah, got it. Don't worry, I'm on the case here.
That's it. Now, that's not the actual game, unfortunately, but that's exactly what he did. Now, at the time, Sheffield United had the England goalkeeper, and it was Alan Hodgkinson. And you remember I've said on here a number of times how Charlie Minton used to deride Ronnie Simpson because he was only 5'10". Well, Hodgkinson was the England goalie, and he was only 5'9". And I think there's some pictures of Hodgkinson I sent you, Steve. That's him playing for England, and you can see the last thing a 5'9" player wants in goal is to have someone like Wyn Davies who can jump 6 foot to head the ball. It's not surprising that Win the Leap scored, but at least he went on to make an international name for himself. But he also was a great coach and set up a number of coaching schools around Sheffield. There's a couple of more pictures of Hodgkinson in our centre. That's him getting his MBE, and he got an MBE because he set up all these coaching groups around Sheffield. And I've got a sneaking fancy some of the young goalkeepers that they've had, like Dean Henderson, etc., may well have graduated from one of his schools. But obviously a nice guy as well as being a good footballer. But the match, and there he is there in action at Bramall Lane. It was a match that was dire, but Wyn's goal gave the fans something to go home and talk about. We had an interesting team: Marshall, Burton, Clark, Monker, McNamee, Ailey, Scott, Elliott, Davis, Robson, and Sinclair. And Joe Harvey was our manager. Now, we finished 10th. And to connect it to the last game, and Sheffield United fans, I think I'm doing this deliberately, they got relegated in this season as well as they did in the last one I spoke about. I know there's many years between them, but both games ended up with the team actually getting relegated. Lots of other interesting people in the team. The centre forward we looked out for was a man called Colin Addison. Now there should be a picture of somebody sitting at a desk. That's him. And look at the newspaper thing on the wall.
Ronnie Rudford.
He was the manager of Hereford when they gave the BBC the 40 years of running for FA Cup sessions when we played Hereford, and he was the man who is reportedly engineered it and pumped all the bloody water out the river next to the ground onto the pitch, so it's just enough to let we play, but not enough to stop the game. And that was Colin Addison. So it was a bit of a downer for him. As I say, an awful game. 32,000 people watched it. Joe Harvey were manager, and memorable for only one reason, and that was Win the Leap. So that was the second game, lads.
Great stuff, George. Glad we got you back on for that. Absolutely brilliant. Great show as always, lads. And look forward to speaking with you all next week. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, with Supermac and Gibbo, looking ahead to Cristiano Ronaldo's debut to Old Trafford, his second debut, and Newcastle United's 1-0 win with Joe Linton getting the winner. Take care, lads. See you later.
Thanks,
Cheers.
See ya.
Sure, everybody.